New at 11, the warning for pet owners about a new kind of toxic algae discovered in the Columbia River, one that turns out is harder to spot. Plus,
and in Clark County, 2 baby goats and a bunny stolen from Orchard's feed store.
They are wonderful. They are pets. They'll come up to anybody. They like to cuddle.
And later, remembering those who gave their lives in service of their country.
It's really hard. Memories.
Of course it is. The honors, the messages this Memorial Day from those who will never forget. But we begin at the end of this holiday weekend with a live look over downtown Portland. 57 degrees as this Memorial Day comes to a close. And on this Monday, the unofficial start of summer, it appears the forecast got the memo. Let's go right to Matt Safino with a first look at your weather impact forecast and what looks like some warmer days ahead. Hey there, Matt.
Hey, David. Yeah, we've had a lot of warm, dry days so far this spring and a whole bunch more coming our way this week, including today. Look at that great sunset out at the Oregon coast this afternoon. We are going to see some more 80-degree days, and so far this year we've already had 6, the first 2 coming way back in March. So it's the first time we've been in the 80s is what I'm going to say. What about 90s? Well, our first 90-degree day last year, that happened earlier than now. It was on the 10th of May. We usually don't hit 80 on average until the middle of June. I think we're going to avoid it this week, but not by much. It's going to get close. Look at the record highs this week. All in the 90s. In fact, Wednesday's record is 100 degrees. That's the hottest May day ever in Portland back, I believe, in 1998. But in the 90s right on through Saturday for the record highs. We won't be getting quite that warm, but tomorrow we'll make the low 80s, get up to about 82. Sunset now pushed all the way back to 8:48 here in late May. And even in the morning, it's going to be really pleasant. So it's just a great day on the way. Even warmer on Wednesday. That's when we'll see our warmest day of the week. We'll get showers again on Thursday, kind of like a repeat of today. Showers in the morning, sun in the afternoon. Then it warms up again at the end of the week. We'll let you know how much and for how long a bit later, David.
Yeah, sunshine, here we come. Thanks, Matt. New tonight, a warning from health officials and local pet owners after their dog died from a type of toxic algae in the Columbia, one Clark County health officials say they have not dealt with before. Catherine Cook's in the newsroom with what they want you to know. Catherine?
David, this type of algae forms into mats, and so far it's been found along the Columbia River. Experts say it's different from the algae blooms we've been reporting on for years, but can be just as toxic. And while these pet owners can't bring their dog back, they hope their story will save another dog's life.
Yeah!
When it comes to pets,
Cedar was the best dog.
Elise and George Pang say Cedar was about as good as any dog could be.
Very sweet, loving, great with kids.
Last October, the Pangs launched their boat from the port of Kamiswashugal to Ackerman Island on the Columbia River. It was Cedar's 2nd birthday. He spent it running on the beach, but the Pangs say he stayed out of the river. They weren't prepared for what happened next.
All of a sudden, our dog kind of came over to where we were, and he kind of had that sick look on his face.
He got up like from my feet and collapsed and then vomited, and that was basically it.
Cedar wasn't breathing, so Elise started CPR. They rushed him to a vet, but they couldn't revive him. Elise says that's when she started to feel ill.
I started to feel feelings of like tingling on my tongue and some brain fog. We didn't know what it was. We were worried that it was drugs or something like that.
The vet told them it was likely a toxic algae exposure. Tests from a stomach sample confirmed that. But it wasn't from a blue-green algae bloom like this one, known to form on the surfaces of lakes and slow-moving water, but rather a benthic algae mat like this one. Experts say they can grow on riverbeds and rocks, then detach and float to shore in clumps.
It's scary to not know really what it was, and of course we hadn't heard anything about it.
This sounds like a very dangerous toxin.
Concerns over toxic algae took center stage at the Clark County Board of Health meeting last week.
So we're now asking ourselves, what can we do differently?
Environmental health specialist Maggie Palmacki says before last October, benthic algae mats weren't even on their radar. She says a second dog passed away after a benthic algae exposure in St. Helens last August. But she says it's hard to know what amount of this new form of toxic algae would be harmful.
Thresholds are based on really good science behind it, which currently doesn't exist. So I would hesitate to say we could arbitrarily select a number.
Unlike algae blooms, health officials say benthic mats don't affect the clarity of the water, making them harder to spot. Also, both forms of algae may or may not be toxic at any given time. With so many variables, Clark County Health Officer Dr. Alan Melnick says their most critical goal is public education.
Cyanotoxins can cause liver failure, among other things. So we're not trying to scare anybody. I think we just want to make sure that people are aware of this. But there's no way to test ourselves out of this ahead of time.
Health officials are warning the public through outreach and new signs on both sides of the river. The Pangs appreciate that.
We just wouldn't want anybody to go through what we had to go through.
Health officials will be monitoring for algae blooms every week through October and investigating any algae mat complaints they get as well. David?
Yeah, giving pet owners a big heads up, certainly the first step here. Thanks, Catherine. Now to a KGW investigation into an effort to try and get an Oregon firefighter out of prison. He is serving 70 months for assault, though his attorneys insist this is a case of self-defense. Now a petition is asking Governor Kotek to take a closer look at Brian Hakeem Simpson's case. He's a wildland firefighter who was staying in a camp in June of last year when a fellow firefighter confronted him and his coworkers, telling them to be quiet. When Simpson responded, he claims the other firefighter, Brandon Olson, called him a racial slur. Then, trial transcripts show Olson threw the first punch, with Simpson admitting to punching back as well as hitting and kicking Olson several times. Supporters say Simpson is being criminalized for being the victim of a hate-fueled attack.
Where I'm from, we call a spade a spade. The N-word is the and when you start throwing that term around, the only intent, unless you're singing one of these hip-hop songs, is meant to demean, disrespect, humiliate.
Well, the Josephine County DA acknowledged the first punch back was likely justified, though repeated kicks to the head and face were not. Olson could not be reached for comment. To get you caught up on tonight's other headlines now, a 15-year-old boy from Northeast Washington is presumed to have drowned after he went missing off of Long Beach. The teenager from Northport near the Canadian border and he was on the coast for a baseball tournament. Around sunset on Friday, he and two adults went swimming and ran into trouble in the cold water. The adults were rescued, though the teen could not be found. The Coast Guard brought in boats and a helicopter, but ultimately called off the search early Saturday. One of the adults who tried to save the boy is still in the hospital and in critical condition. While what could be the first significant wildfire of the season has now grown to 3,000 acres, it is the Butte Fire. It sparked Sunday afternoon about 50 miles southeast of the Dalles in central Oregon. It's burning along the John Day River near the junction of Wheeler, Gillum, and Wasco counties. Today, helicopters pulled water from the river and dumped it on the fire. It's a relatively remote area, and while officials say there are some structures threatened, no evacuation orders have been issued. Meanwhile, smoke filled the air along I-205 tonight following a fire in southeast Portland. This is video from the ODOT camera near Stark showing how quickly it was burning there. Portland Fire says this was a fire at a homeless camp that then extended into the grass. No one was hurt and crews put the flames out before they spread too far. And the Oregon Coast Humane Society is asking for your help finding a dog who had just been adopted when he escaped from his new owners. Mason, a 7-year-old white and tan terrier mix, went missing during his journey home to McMinnville on Saturday. His new owners say he escaped his leash at the Van Duzer Rest area in Otis. Search crews set traps and they even brought Mason's former kennel mate to the area to help lure him home. If you see Mason, don't try to catch him as he's likely to run. Call the Oregon Coast Humane Society instead. New at 11, thieves nabbed 2 baby goats in the middle of the night from a Clark County community feed store. The crime caught on camera rattling not just the business, but hundreds of locals, many of who are on the lookout tonight. Alma McCarty has the story.
Our animals are like local celebrities. We brought them in for the community.
At Orchard's feed store.
They're not for sale. They're just for youth to elderly to go and visit.
Visitors can find all kinds of cuddly creatures, both inside and out.
The baby donkey and his parents and the goats and the ducks and the geese.
But on this particular afternoon, General Manager Matthew Beckley says they're missing 3 of their precious pets, including 2 baby goats Andrew and Andrew.
Our 2 sibling goats that we've bottle fed out. So they were named after our 2 nursery technicians who are also named Andrew and Andrew. So we just thought it was funny, and then they kind of became celebrities around here.
Not long after the first employee got to work on Monday morning, they noticed that the locks were cut and the goats were missing. The store quickly handed over everything they had to the sheriff's office, including this security video.
And Beckley says it only took the thief 13 minutes.
They definitely knew what they were doing. It was all pre-planned. They knew what they wanted. They came in, stayed in certain areas. I don't think they realized we had cameras everywhere. They were in, out. They grabbed one after another, the one person, and walked out one after another with the goats.
Cameras also captured another theft of a baby rabbit hours earlier, while the store was open and busy.
The woman blocked the man who was right here. He reached in, grabbed the rabbit, put it in his coat, walked around and walked outside, and they got in the car and they left.
At this point, the team here doesn't know if the crimes are connected. As Clark County deputies investigate, Orchard's feed shared screenshots and suspect information with their thousands of followers.
Ultimately, this is a complete family and a community, and we just want our family back.
In Clark County, Alma McCarty, KGW News.